Welcome to the San Gorgonio chapter's Trail Talk series. My name is John St. Clair, and I am your Zoom host and one of the members of the Trail Talk committee. And I will start out by, first of all, telling you today's topic has to do with hiking the Camino in Portugal, and actually some information about in Europe in general. And next month's Trail Talk is who should we thank for our trails? And Walter Roth is going to do a presentation on trail maintenance, which should be very interesting. He's very experienced volunteer trail maintenance guy with the San Gorgonio Wilderness Association. So now for the ground rules. So everybody, please mute yourself, except for Joe, our speaker. And I'm going to scroll through and see if everybody has. It looks like everybody has muted themselves. Okay, good. And stay muted the entire time. If you have a question to ask Joe, type your question in the chat section. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little icon that looks like a talking bubble from a cartoon, and it has the word chat under it. If you click on that, it opens up a screen, and down at the bottom where it says to everyone, there's a little box. You click under it, and you can type in your question and send it to everyone. And Julianne and Carla will be monitoring that, and they will relay questions to Joe. If there are any natural breaks where he pauses, we can have him answer questions, or at the end, all questions will be answered. And that way you won't forget what your question is. If you write it down in the chat section while you're thinking about it, that's a good way to do it. So I think at this point, did we decide Julianne's going to do the introduction or Carla?
No, I'll go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Are we ready for it?
Yeah, so let me put you on spotlight, Carla, and you can introduce our speaker.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to introduce Joe Amador as our speaker tonight. Joe has been retired from teaching elementary school for 7 years now. And I know he's been absolutely enjoying retirement because I get to hear about all the wonderful adventures he's going on as a hiker and a camper. He loves hiking at state and national parks all around the United States, but also enjoys traveling internationally and doing long distance hike, like the Camino de Santiago that he'll be talking about tonight. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right. Hadrian's Wall in England, and the Inca Trail in Peru. And I'm hoping maybe one of these times we can get him to talk about those as well. And he now has been leading hikes with the Sierra Club for 2 years. And I know he started coming out to some of my hikes and car camps over 2 years ago. And so I'm happy he's joined the ranks of becoming a leader. So Joe, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carla. And thank everybody for attending here. I'm going to talk today about my trip to the Camino de Santiago. And let me go from the beginning. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, Camino de Santiago. I did it in May of 2020 this year. I started out with 4 people, and let me tell you a little bit about the Camino de Santiago. It's known as, in English, as the Way of St. James. It's a network of pilgrims' ways, pilgrimages leading to the shrine of the Apostle St. James the Great in the Cathedral Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, northwestern Spain. It started in the early 9th century, about 812, as a religious pilgrimage. They found supposedly the bones of St. James and located it there. And from then on, it's been a constant stream of what they call pilgrims going to the shrine. And in Europe, there's hundreds of ways to get to Santiago, not just in Spain, not just in Portugal, starting from all over Europe, England, Germany, Czechoslovakia, Italy is one of the most famous pilgrimages in the world. It fell into kind of like disfavor in the Middle Ages, and then it got a resurgence in last century. A lot of businesses started promoting it. The government started promoting it, and it's found, like many countries, other countries in Europe and the world, that long distance pilgrimages are very beneficial to the country and tourism, and just getting the word out about their country. The Way of St. James is the most famous route is the Camino Frances. That's the French way. Starts usually in Saint-Jean and goes across the Pyrenees and goes along northern Spain. And you can see some of the other different ways to get there. And that way is completely, you can see the dominance of it. There's other way, Via de Plata. The Camino Inglés is the English way, comes north to south. The Camino Portuguese starts in Portugal and goes south to north. The most famous way, of course, is the French way. Starts in France, goes all the way across. And here it shows it going all the way to the sea. But normally it's the Camino ends in Santiago, the city of Santiago de Compostela. People extend it out to Finisterre, which means the end of the world, and as a continuation. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But in May, we decided to do the coastal route, or the route from Portugal. Portugal starts usually in Lisbon, but we're going to start at Porto, and it goes along the coast. Or you also can see that there's a central route that goes in there. So a lot of different ways to get there. So this is the route that we decided on: Porto to Santiago, going along the coast. Then it goes into the middle of into Spain. The first part here is Portugal, and then goes to the middle of Spain. We used the primary guide that we used this time was the Camino Portugués guide. It's called the Village to Village. They publish a bunch of different types of guides, and we used Facebook. We used the internet to get all the different. There's a lot of information out there. Facebook was very handy because you get real-time news. There are recommendations for places to stay, restaurants, weather. So there's a lot of information just on the day-to-day activities. The guidebooks, there's another one by John Beerley, also it's very good. Gives you pretty much how to plan for it, what to look for. We found that sometimes that some of the numbers didn't work, or that the albergues changed. The pandemic closed a lot of places to stay. So there's different ways to get information of where to stay. The pilgrims usually have a signature mark on them. There's the conch shells. They almost everybody you see walking the Pilgrim's Way, you see them carrying the shells, and it comes from the myths or stories that that when they found St. James' boat, that it was covered with the shells. Or there's different stories of where they originated, but it's almost always you see the shells being carried by the pilgrims. One's from I did this pilgrimage in 7 years ago along northern Spain, and then this year I did it from the Portuguese way. So I got two different shells, and the one on the left, it was actually given to us by a Spaniard when we crossed over into Spain. But he thought we were lost, and he started talking to him, and he found out we were pilgrims, and then reached into his bag and gave us two shells. So that's how we ended up with the shells, as a gift from a Spaniard into our first 10 minutes in Spain. We start off with what's called a credential, and you get that at the start, and it certifies you basically as a pilgrim. Now, there's a reason why you want to be, not everybody on the trail is a pilgrim. Some do it just for sport reasons, some people for the physical activity, the cultural enrichment, and some people do it for very religious reasons, and a lot of them do that. That's how it started out, but it's been taken over a little bit for different reasons. There's a lot of books been written. What you do is you get this credential at the start, and as you go along every day, the place you stay will stamp it. You also get stamps for restaurants, bars, churches. Almost everybody has a stamp. And sometimes they'll stamp it for you, or they have a little stand where you can stamp it yourself. And as you go along, you should have at least one stamp for every day. When you get to 100 kilometers to Santiago, then you should have at least 2 stamps a day. Very easy to get the stamps. Very easy to get 2 stamps a day. And when you get to Santiago, they give you a certificate of completion, and they look at your credential to see if you qualified for it. And they don't check it very well, but supposedly they're supposed to look at it. It also qualifies you to receive the discounts that you get and the benefits you get for walking the trail. You get sometimes discounts in restaurants, show them your credential, and those what's called a pilgrim's meal, which are a lot cheaper, very good meals. If you're staying in a municipal albergue or hostel, it's required almost that you carry one. A lot of the private hostels and hotels really don't require it, but they'll stamp them for you. So you start off with a credential. You have your credential, your shells usually. And this time we started technically with 4 of us on our Santiago road. 2 of us started in Lisbon, Dave and Gustavo. So they started before us. They're going to meet Afra and myself in Porto. But along the way, Dave had some problems with his feet. He had blisters, and he had to stop, turn around. This happens a lot. You see people along the road, injuries, pulled tendons, blisters. It's very difficult sometimes to walk for, 30, 3 weeks at a time, 30 days, a couple weeks at a time on hard surfaces. If you're used to hiking in the mountains, it's a little bit different. When I did the Camino in France or in northern Spain, it was varied landscapes, mountains, you had flat plains. And we wanted to try the Portuguese way just because it was different. You have the ocean to the left for the most part. You cross rivers, a lot of water, very lush landscapes, as you'll see later on. So it's entirely different experience. And I have people ask me, well, which one did you prefer? Well, they're both different. And I loved them both. It's just a matter of what you want to do. And this is my other pilgrim, Afra, who started at the beach behind us. This is where we started. We had a pass, a rail pass that we used to explore Porto. And there was 1 extra day. So instead of starting exactly in Porto, we took it to the end of the line and started in Puebla de Varzim, which is a little ways up. What it did is it cut 1 day of the trip. And this was to the left, almost the entire way in Portugal, the ocean. Beautiful beaches, cool weather. The water was very cold. We did this in May. Very lucky because great weather, no rain, didn't hit a bit of rain. We have 4 of our friends that just completed it. Kathy Viola is just today, I think, is when she went to Santiago, and they had rain, a lot of rain. So we were very fortunate. Springtime, a lot of flowers, beautiful landscapes. The trail goes along the coast. There's a boardwalk that you walk for a long ways. signed, tells you where to go, where to turn. If you want to go to the beach, you can go to the beach. It's very beautiful. It works inland. The trail was designed to feature a lot of the landscape, but also go by churches, to go by hospitals and things along to aid the pilgrim. That's one of the advantages of it. So a lot of times you don't see it going right into town. So this was one of the first towns we got into, was Pao. Very old buildings. So Spanish influence. A lot of rivers to cross, bridges to cross. Accommodations. We stayed primarily in what's they called albergues. They bunk beds. Stay in very inexpensive. This was a private one, but they still had bunk beds in it. We've stayed in municipals where they have almost 80 bunk beds in rows, but very inexpensive, but very clean. You can see here, it's just spotless. Very well maintained places all along the way. And it was pretty easy to find places to stay. We didn't have a problem. There was only one time when we tried to stay within budget that it was an issue. But depending on our on booking.com, on the guidebooks, and also everywhere you went, there was help. You stop in an albergue, they have a list of albergues coming up, hostels coming up, where to stay. People were very helpful. The churches, the trail is designed to pass by the churches. So a lot of times, especially in Portugal, you had restrooms to go to, you had your stamp, places to rest. And there's the pilgrim of old with his shell on his walking stick and his hat. The other item was a gourd that usually some people carry as a decoration. Of course, they carry their water. And the greeting is Buen Camino, good road. And here you have a sign with the good way in different languages. A bunch of different languages. Buen Camino is what we use in Portugal. Buen Camino is what we used in Spain. And you can see the beach behind us there. Just beautiful seashores and restaurants along the way, some seafood, fresh seafood, wonderful weather. The towns, decorated, welcoming. You see the umbrellas and streets in a lot of different countries. It's something that's a little common decoration, but it's nice to see. You're walking down the streets. This is a lavanderia. It's a public clothes washing place. Here, they decorated it. Somebody painted the constellation above it. So you're washing your clothes. You can see this nice little painting there. We referred to this by one of the hostels we stayed in. So you have to go see this. And most of the times these were unused, but we did come across a couple of times where it was some people were actually using it, washing their clothes. And then we get little baskets and then take them over and hang them up. See them all along the way. Here's an example of the papers that they'll give you sometimes as a guide. And the albergues, the hostels, they work together. They'll say, you know what, this one here is in the next town. This one here is in Caminha, which is coming up, how far away it is. And the numbers, phone numbers, you can call ahead, make a reservation. And these were all independents. So they kind of work together and support each other. Very nice system. In one place, we weren't getting hold of the guy, and the owner came over and called for us, and got hold of the next albergue to stay in. Very helpful. A lot of water, very lush, rivers flowing, many, many places. Crossing little bridges, very cool. Of course, the churches and little towns, decorations, springtime, the flowers. And as much as possible, they tried to take, the trail would go behind the village or off to the side. So you're not going down in front of people's yards or in the main streets. It's off to the side. And the old roads, or sometimes in their old Roman roads, a lot of brick, concrete, rocks, cobblestones on the ground. And you're walking here, and sometimes you'll come across around the corner, and there'll be a little stand of fruit that's free, or you can drop a donation on it for them, and people just take a fruit and eat it. Go along the way. It's a gift to the pilgrims. More rivers to cross. This was one of the albergues we stayed in, Casa de Sardau, a salamander house. This young man, he spent some time in Africa as a teacher, and he took over his parents' house and made it into a hostel. Beautiful place, wonderful place to stay. It had one of those kind of like a hippie vibe to it, nice little music, and very nice. He had horses and sheep, turtles. You just walk on and sit on the lounge or sit on the balcony and just take it all in. See the ocean on the background. Continuing on our way into Portugal, we started to see Spain in the distance, and still the beautiful beaches. I don't have any pictures on, and I'm sorry I didn't miss it. There were some lobster traps, lobster storage places for the fish. And you see a lot of the boats with fishermen on the sides, and of course the restaurants with the fresh seafood. The back trails. We're heading towards Spain at this point. There's another forest. There's a lot of national forest this trail takes you through. Just beautiful. There's different types of accommodations. This one's actually a campground, and you had little chairs on. There's a cafe there. On the other side, the back side of these trees, the beach was there. So you just walk out there, and the beach was just gorgeous. Cold water. Didn't see many people swimming in it, but it's right before you get to Spain. And there's Spain across the river. It was kind of bittersweet because we loved Portugal so much. We hated to leave it. It was quite a ways to delay, and stay in the country. The people were so nice. The food was fantastic. The scenery, the cities, just so much to do. But we got to the point where we went to Camino. Right? This is the border between Spain and Portugal. There's 3 ways to get in. There's a river Minho right there that separates the two. And you can either walk across, there's a bridge in the town. There's a ferry that wasn't working at the time. And there's a speedboat that you jump in, you pay them €6, and the guy will speed across the river and drop you off on the beach in Spain. And that's a little boat. For €6, he'll take you right across. And you load it up, and he just he turned the gas on, and he just sped across you. Just the water was flying in your face. It was a different experience. So when you landed on there, he totally just jump off. So you jumped off, and he would gesture to the left. So just walk on the beach to the left, and you are in Spain. Nobody checked you in. Nobody checked your passport. It was like one of those things in the movies where, oh, you're smuggled across this country, and you're on your own. But it was beautiful. The Italian man on the left, I think he started in Lisbon. This was his 3rd week, I think, walking along. But that was it. Walk to the left. You're in Spain now. And you just go to the end of the beach, and then you find some boardwalks, and then you get to town. So now the people speak Spanish. And again, the beautiful trails. You know you're going the right way. You see the yellow arrow. The yellow arrow points towards Santiago. Off to the side, it tells you how far it is, 153 kilometers. If it's a blue arrow, that means you're going the opposite direction. And some people do follow the blue arrow. They'll go all the way to Santiago and they'll come back the same way. So they're following the blue arrow or going opposite the yellow. But they make it very easy. Follow the yellow arrows, follow the signs. You'll see the signs on trees, on buildings, and these little monuments there. And of course, the pilgrimage meals, delicious seafood. The beer was inexpensive. And they really gave you too much. You can almost share meals. If you're somebody else, it's fantastic. In this case, the owner came by and afterwards brought a little aperitif as a gesture. And following on trails, rivers, creeks. Very lush, a lot of water, a lot of archaeological artifacts, Roman, even pre-Roman, rocks and structures all along the way. These are oreros. They're a granary, basically. You store grain here. Well, that's what they used to use them for. Keep them off the ground so the rodents wouldn't attack them. And now, mostly, they're decorations. They're kind of protected by the governments of Spain and Portugal. So you really can't tear them down. You can upgrade them, make them look really nice, structures. But you see these all along the way in Portugal and Spain. And they're basically just to store corn and other grains. This was an old monastery. Beautiful grounds. They have like a park setting in front. And the monks used to stay here. Now it's being used as an albergue and a hotel. So you can spend the night. And sleep in the monk's room. Very simple room. There was a sink and then a communal showers and restrooms. But nice views from the outside. And this, I think, was 12 euros a night. In the evenings. At this point, we're at 100 kilometers from Santiago. So they had this sign marking the spot. All our guidebooks said we weren't. It was a little bit more, but well, use it as a photo op. A lot of waterfalls. There was a mill up the hill from this. You can walk up there and see the structures that were put in there. This is Afra again in one of the structures. A lot of this is protected. And you see in the distance, there's these like barges. And what they are is they're growing mussels, or they're gathering mussels. They will drop their rope down into the water and let the mussels attach themselves. And when they're ready, they pull them up. We didn't know what they were for. It just couldn't see what the use was. And then we stopped a man and he explained to us that this is for mussels. And he made a point of saying that these are the best mussels in the world. And it was funny because you go to different places and the people are very proud of their the food, the cuisine, and the things that are there. And he said they were best mussels in the world. Then, of course, Afra was from the Netherlands, and she kind of shook her head and said, "No, I think Netherlands is the best mussels in the world." So I don't know. So they were very good. I had some later in the hotel. And the bridge across the distance. Continuing, and here you see the brick cobblestones there. Sometimes you would get to a place where there's two ways to go. They're both going to get you to the same place. One will go a little bit into town, and the other one a little more rural. You go by the farms, you see the grapevines on the side. That was one of the nice things about traveling out there. You see all these farms. You look in, you look at their backyard and see everything they're growing, all the different vegetables, and a lot of grapevines. And sometimes you do have to go into town, get your supplies or different kinds of things in case you had to get some suntan lotion because it was just getting so hot. Our friends that did it in September and October hit a lot of rain, but we got the heat, and it was the sun was having its effect. But very nice little towns. If you lose your place or you didn't know where you're going, all you really do is just stand on the corner and put your hands up, and somebody will eventually just point you, say, go that way, go that way. Very helpful. They always make recommendations where to eat. Crossing the bridge. The backside of the town, she's just walking along the trails there. Nice, well maintained, very clean. The churches, there's always the churches. And nice to go in and see the different types of churches also. Some are very simple, some are very ornate decorations. This is the Guardia Civil, the police. And they were actually giving stamps out. So they would stamp your book also. And if you have any questions, they were willing to help. If you have any problems, you tell them about a problem. I think this lady here was at an issue, a man in one of the cars. So she was telling them about it. They said they're going to take care of it, hopefully. But they were all along the trail. You see them in the main streets, and the tourists bring in a lot of publicity, a lot of income. So they do try to keep those trails safe. Feel very safe along this path. Beautiful little towns. This one has hot springs. Caldas del Reyes. This particular laundry, lavanderia, has hot water because there were hot springs in this. The city was named Caldas del Reyes, the cauldrons of the kings. And you could there were a lot of people who had their feet dipped into it, just cooling them or, cleaning them and making them feel a little bit better. There's nobody here in this picture, but there was in others where they were just sitting there. The water was nice and warm. There was another little fountain that had water coming out that was very hot. So, and it had a little sign on it, don't put your feet in this. Very nice little town. The hot springs were there were three of them. One was a public that was closed, and they had two hotels that had the hot springs in there you'd use. I think it was 10 euros. Go in there and soak for a little bit. Some great restaurants. That's where I had the mussels. Again, this actually was from the tourism department. You go into these little offices, and they're there to help. So they'll give you a list of where to stay. And if you decide to go into another route, the variante espiritual, the spiritual variant, there's places to stay there too. And they'll give you the phone numbers, how far it is. There's a lot of information. So even if you aren't a techie and don't want to depend on Google Maps or your guidebooks or Camino Ninja app, there's a lot of information, and they give it willingly. So you just walk in and, oh, here, take this. This one, I believe, we had a lady actually using this one. You can see the trees in the background, gardens. Some of the houses did not look, they would look like vacation homes. There were a big difference between some of the places that had their own little gardens and the people living there were trying to maintain their food and things like that. And others looked a lot like vacation homes. People from big cities would come and buy their little places there to visit. In the back alleys. And flowers along the way. A lot of rivers. So now We've gone through Vigo, Bayona. Bayona, we had planned on being a 0 day because there's some islands off the coast there. They're World Heritage Sites. But it took us a little bit longer in Vigo to find a place. It's kind of tiring. And that's what happens a lot. Sometimes you get tired. And if you're doing a 16-mile day or an 18-mile day, you pretty much want to just stay there and then leave the next day instead of trying to see some of the sites. But from Bayona and Vigo, there's some beautiful islands out there that highly recommended. Now, if you look at the town called Redondela, right, the curve there, that is where the central route meets the coastal route. And at that point, you sit there and you see people from coming in all different directions. They're just joining. So you see a lot of pilgrims at that point. The albergues, they fill up. There's more people on the road in the cafes and the places all along the way. Now, Padron is the last city last big city before you get to Santiago. A lot of people do different things. They'll go a bit further so that they get into Santiago early. But we did something a little bit different. We went off to there's a little town next to Padron that has an old monastery there. And there's a history here where when Columbus's ships, one of the ships came back and landed in Bayona and brought back peppers. I think they're Tabasco peppers. And of course, they took them and they started growing them, and Padron became famous for them. So you order Padron peppers. Have you ever heard people talk about playing Padron roulette or Padron pepper roulette? Is because occasionally some will be hot, but most of them are very mild, delicious. Anyway, the town next to Padron was famous for growing those peppers, and they had a huge monastery there. And to get there, they start with red arrows. So it was a different path. And we knew about this because of the books. You follow the red arrows to get to that particular location. Of course, you pass a little more farms. Here, this was a communal farm, or must have been all family, planting the seeds for the next season. And this was the monastery. The main church here was built in 1643. It is the home of the Franciscans. And we know about the Franciscans because Father Serra was the one in California. And he was actually from this seminary here, in this church. And it still functioned as a seminary up until the 1950s. And right now there's 3 monks that still live there. When they're in their 80s, when they die, this will revert back to either the state or some private hands. So they're waiting for them to pass out. This gentleman on the right, that's sitting against the wall, he's from Czechoslovakia, and he didn't know any English, Spanish, Portuguese, French. He only knew 2 languages, Russian and Czech. So good luck trying to communicate with anybody in the place there. But he did it. He was by himself, and he traveled the whole way up there, almost to Santiago. We did see him in Santiago. Very, very nice man. This was a very special place. The albergue there, it was like, say, the monks still live there, but they let us use the other rooms to stay in. It was very simple. You had a sheet, pillow, 3 bunk beds. It was still comfortable, and a communal shower. Stuff like that. And people stayed the night there, and they were from all over. And some people from localized areas, some locals, would stay there also because they enjoyed the food. They had a communal meal. The one guy, the hospitalero, made the meal, and he had some help from some other helpers. And we had people there from Czechoslovakia, from France, United States, of course, Holland, Portugal, Spain. Very nice group. That's one of the highlights of doing this type of trip is you meet people from all over the world. And you break bread with them, and in some cases, drink a little bit too much alcohol with them. But this couple on the right, they were instructors at a school. And as we were walking later on in the trip after this, we saw a car stop in front of us, and almost in an intersection. And they jumped out, both of them, and they said they had to wish us a good buen camino. They're on our way, but very nice people. The gentleman here is used to be a former monk or friar, and he gave a speech. Basically he gave us a tour of the whole the property, telling us about the history of the church, the history of the monastery, the land, the peppers in the town, and right now he's a policeman. He left service and went to become a policeman, but now he still comes over and gives tours, talks about it. So we had just had dinner, beautiful, great dinner, salad, and soup, and of course a lot of wine and bread. And at the end, the hospitalero, the guy at the very top there, started giving us some, we all had little shots of, I think it was paint thinner, because I really couldn't tell. It was pretty strong, pretty awful, but everybody was in a good mood. So that was, from then we went to Santiago, which was the goal. And if you look on this is from Facebook, but they give a total of the pilgrims that go to or sign up with the office, pilgrim's office, and it's record numbers. People from all over the world. They haven't been able to do this for 2 years now, so you have just huge amounts of people going. And at this point, this was in September, 327,000. And there's an estimate that says, well, that's only part of it, because a lot of people don't get their certificate. They don't complete all of it, or they just go and they don't care about the certificate. So they'll just do because there's so many people. And on the way to Santiago, and there is a cathedral from entering the city. Beautiful cathedral. And you see the big incense burner, the Botafumeiro, right hanging from the middle there is. And this was after one of the masses, so you still smelled the incense burning. And there it is. Mission accomplished. So when you get there, they give you a little certificate. This is from 2015. This is they ask you whether you did this journey for spiritual reasons or for physical reasons. And the certificate that they give you reflects a little bit of that. So one has a little more, the Pilgrims logo up there, and then they give your name in Latin. But it's very, very, very similar. And this is the at night, the cathedral with the arrows still pointing out there. Okay, so how much does it cost? Well, I didn't figure in getting to Portugal and getting out of Portugal, because that'll depend on how much mile points you have on your card. I got a good deal. So this is just leaving from day one, May 1st. Took us 12 days. Did 150 miles. We cut off, like say, one day because of the metro pass. But we averaged about 35 euros per day. That included breakfast, snacks, and dinner, pilgrim's meals. Accommodations averaged about 12 euros. You occasionally have little expenses, like the boat trip was 6 euros. Souvenirs, sometimes you want to buy things, but very easily, 35 euros per day. There were plenty of places to stay for 12 euros. Like one of the municipals, it was like 6 euros a person. That was a bunk bed. You stayed in a nice, clean facility, showers, restroom, places to eat there, bring your own food. Some places had kitchens, so you can make your own food if you wanted to make it. We in the Casa de Sordao, we stayed in Hugo's place. There was a French couple that made their own meal, and it was fantastic. It's like they shared a little bit of it, not much, but shared a little bit of it. Just a fantastic meal. You also spend a little bit washing clothes. Almost every place had places to wash a sink and someplace to dry it. If you wanted to use a automated washer and dryer, usually runs around 4 euros. One most expensive place I think was 8 euros for wash and dry. So it wasn't too bad. But there was a couple times where I just washed the clothes. I had a little like one of those where it's combined. It's a little sheet, has soap and softener in it. You just throw it in the water, mix them up, and then let the clothes dry. And we had, like I say, nice days, so the clothes did dry occasionally. Very few problems with that. Communication is very important. I had an international plan. It didn't pay more than 100 per billing cycle, but you can get a SIM card, 5 to 30 euros, depending on how much data you need. It was important because we used data for Google Maps, some of the apps like Camino Ninja to tell you where you're going, to call the albergues ahead of time or that day. We did not plan out where we're going to stay ahead of time. We would do that the day of or the night before. We figure, oh, we're going to be in this town. So we'll look and see from the list or from our books where to stay. Of course, you use what's up. I use that, and I contacted some of the albergues. So it's free as long as sometimes you sell your data and it will come up on your bill. But very important, communication. And that is it. And anybody questions?
Why don't you take off the share screen?
Okay. Oh, one more thing. Afra went on to Muxia and Finisterre. She continued on. And a lot of people do that. They'll continue on to the end of the world. I decided to go to, I wanted to see more of Spain. So I went to Madrid, then Malaga, flew out of Barcelona. But that happens. You decide what to do, Okay, so you stop share. Okay. Questions?
Joe, a couple. Tell us the difference between an alberga, if there's a difference, an alberga, a hostel, and a municipal.
Alberga is basically a hostel. It's a Spanish word for where to stay. There's private ones, and most of the ones we stayed in were private. Somebody just bought a house, changed the bedrooms, put some bunk beds in there, and put word out that she's taking pilgrims or he's taking pilgrims, and that's basically the alberga, the hostel. It's private. Like the one guy, Hugo, it was in his family's. It's been his family's home for generations. They were self-sustaining. It was a self-sustaining farm. They grew their own crops, their own animals. He just kept it up as a albergue. The municipals are run by the city or the municipality, and so it's government run, and they're very inexpensive. One of them we tried to get into was closed because they hadn't opened up after the pandemic. But they're very simple. They're like I say, bunk beds, basically a sheet, paper sheet to use. I carry a camping sleeve, one of those things you put inside of a sleeping bag, and it worked fine. Afra carried a quilt. It was very lightweight, and she had no problems at all. It was very mild weather. Like I say, we didn't need a sleeping bag. And most of the private ones will have blankets for you. There, you also had the option, and some people do this, of staying in a regular hotel or a parador, which is a real fancy hotel, very expensive. I met a guy on the first Camino that I did who just stayed in the high-end hotels. He was from Harvard, Massachusetts, but he loved it, and that was his way of doing it. There's no set way. You do your own trip.
Joe, tell us a little bit about the pilgrim's meal and eating communally and how that all works. What is a pilgrim's meal?
A pilgrim's meal is you go to a restaurant and they'll have on the outside on little like a billboards, a pilgrim meal advertised for 12 euros or something. And you show them your credential that you are a pilgrim, and you get the advantage of having that meal. Sometimes it's a very big meal. You can actually share it. It's just so big. It comes with sometimes a little dessert, the meal, either wine or coffee, and fantastic. So they're delicious. The communal meals, if you stay in some of these hostels and albergues, they have kitchens in. So you can cook your own meals. You can go to the market, buy your ingredients, and there are markets everywhere, and make your own. They have the pots and pans, and the communal meals is usually sponsored by the albergue itself. In the one place we stayed, they made the meal. It was a soup, salad, bread, and wine. They served it. And that particular place was a donation. So you paid what you wanted to pay. And everybody ate together. At the end of the meal, everybody pitched in, cleaned the dishes. And then we sat around and had our little aperitifs. They called them chupitos. So pretty terrible. I didn't want him to fill one of my little cups. So I put some water in it so he thinks that I was still drinking. But he caught onto that pretty quick and still poured some more in. So, but it was nice. But very nice. It's a good opportunity to talk with other people. One place, the mom of the owner made a vegetable soup, and for 2 euros, you have a big bowl, and you can buy a bottle of wine and open it up. And we sat there with primarily Germans, and we just had a great time. And everybody tells their stories. You walk with people, and the first thing they say is, where are you from? And then where'd you start at? And then it goes on from there. This is the first Camino, and I've been here for a long time, or I've done this quite a few times. And then you come in across locals also. We stayed in one place where there are 2 Spaniards from Sevilla who just like to go to these little hostels and stay there. They'll visit. It was so inexpensive. And I stayed up one night arguing with this Spaniard. He loved his history, he loved Spain, and he didn't like my interpretation of the Spanish conquest in the New World. So we had a nice discussion about that. Very pleasant discussion.
Joe, tell me a little bit about some safety issues. I know some people might feel a little bit cautious about being in a communal hostile situation. Safety issues, maybe issues for women.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
Okay, first of all, there's a lot of women walking themselves, but not walking by themselves, but on the trail by themselves. Usually you don't end up by yourself. You're usually walking with someone. There's so many people out there. And when you're going to the hostels, the owners are usually there, and they have a vested interest in keeping you safe. Any issues you have to deal with, very helpful in terms of where we stay on this road here, or say, you had the police, driving along, keeping an eye on things. It's a common question, and the Facebook group, the Camino Portugués, and also the Camino de Santiago Facebook group. The question gets asked a lot, mostly women, that how safe is it? So how safe is it for women walking by themselves? And most of the answers from people themselves, it's very safe. And like I say, usually you don't end up walking by yourself. Usually we're somebody and you're going for a long time, just discussing those very issues of where are you from? Where'd you start at? How do you like it so far? Where'd you stay at? A lot of ways, and then you make friends. We saw this this one German man who was trying to make a life decision. He didn't know whether he was going to retire or go back to work, and he was going to make a decision after he finished his Camino. And we saw him many times along the way, and always, hey, it's good to see you, and start discussion. So you see a lot of people the same, they're walking almost at the same pace. So you'll see them sometimes in the same places and same restaurants, things like that. But like I say, there was one lady did have an issue, and she was telling the policeman, and hopefully they dealt with it.
What kind of an issue? Do you remember?
There was a guy sitting in his car and probably doing inappropriate things.
Got it.
So,
Yeah. So tell us about your typical schedule. How do people start at dawn? How early do people start out? When's the normal time to get into the hostel or the municipal?
usually you start early. You would get out of, if it was a big albergue, so many people start moving around, you wake up. And you're not supposed to turn on your lights and things like that before 6. But after 6, you start to see people moving around, getting their packs ready. The best thing to do is take your pack up. You're usually ready to go. And you take your pack out into the common area. That's where you pack. Sometimes ahead of time, you'll stop at a market to get some fruit or some little juice to drink on the way. And then you just start heading out. Eventually, you'll get to a little cafe, and there's your chance for your coffee, your croissant, and your fresh squeezed orange juice. It usually runs about €6 for all of that. And then you continue on your day. Usually your lunch is a fruit or bread that you buy along the way. The fruit was delicious. And then you go into the town that you want to stay, and you try and get there in around 3 o'clock. And what you do is you put your stuff, get your bed set, take your shower if you want to take your shower, and then explore the town. And you add like probably another mile or 2, just exploring that little town or city, because they have so much things to offer. You can go to museums, you can go to little artifacts, ancient buildings, the churches, a lot of things to see in this thing. And just go to the restaurants, find out which restaurant people are recommending. And it gives you a lot of time before. So you don't go, some people will hike and they'll walk and they'll check in around 6 o'clock at night. That's really too late. Sometimes you want to get in early to make sure you have a place to stay. And also that you're prepared for the next day. And that's getting a good rest. And that's after you're doing maybe 15 miles a day.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how many miles did you average? It was about 15.
Yeah.
Okay.
When I did the French way in Spain, I would adjust because of what was happening in the city. So you would see notices that maybe there's a concert going on that night. So I said, oh, I'm staying here. And I'd make it up the next day. So you don't want to be so structured that everything's timed. You have to be here at a certain time. It takes away a little bit from it. Some people don't do that because they don't want to carry a lot of luggage, and they're carrying luggage, so they have it sent ahead, and so they're on a schedule.
Okay.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
How heavy was your pack?
Mine was a little heavier because I was there in Portugal probably a week or so before. And then I stayed in Spain probably another week and a half, almost 2 weeks after that. So I carried extra clothing. So it was about 20 pounds.
Okay.
Little bit heavier than what normally people carry, because you really don't need a lot. The lighter the better. There's places to wash clothes. There's places to pick up things and what you need. You don't have to carry food, just a little bit of water. In Portugal, there was no problem with the fountains and the water. In Spain, sometimes you had to go a distance, but again, there was usually not an issue.
Boots or shoes? Boots or shoes?
Well, you know, there's always contentions about that, because I like boots. I took my boots, but you saw a lot of people, especially young people, sticking their sandals with the new Tevas or whatever, and they're very comfortable with it. It really depends on what your feet, what happens with your feet. The feet is the biggest problem. We saw a guy from Estonia, a young man, strong, strapping guy, and his feet looked like hamburger. He had bandages, red, and oh, it was a mess. And he had heavy boots. They told him he needed heavy boots, and he was carrying a heavy pack. And he just wasn't used to that, even though he was a soldier. And then you see other people just walking away, and we saw these two young ladies that went from, they started in France, they had passed Santiago, they're on their way to Lisbon, so they're going the whole distance, and no issue at all with their feet. It was just like, oh my gosh, I mean, it's you know, how you take care of them, and you have to take care of them. You know, don't try as much as possible not to get them wet. And then and you know, Dave, who is a experienced hiker, you know, backpacker, he leads national hikes. He had problems with blisters from walking on streets and pavement for all these days. And he got a little wet and he got a little warm, and but you never know. I didn't have any problems at all, and Afra didn't have it either.
Okay.
So it's kind of
Carla,
hard. Even in camping, you say, well, what do you like to use? The low, you know, like Hokas or big boots. And it's really so much of a personal preference. What works with you?
right. Joe, I was just going to call out to Carla. Any questions?
Yeah, I did have one. I noticed that Chris Torres chimed in. She talked about, you know, that you mentioned there are many different ways you could go about, you know, picking your route.
Yes.
How did you go about picking your route? And did you use a guidebook, or did you use more like Facebook or apps, or kind of what was your?
I used a guidebook, and then I kind of had a confirmation from a lot of people on Facebook. They're saying they're recommending a coastal route. Like I said, I did do the Spanish or the French way 7 years ago, and it was a great experience, but you didn't see the ocean until the very end. In this case, it was an entirely different country. Portugal was, you know, very different from Spain, and I wanted that experience. Also wanted that ocean breeze, and looking out and every now and then and seeing the waves crash against the rocks. So it's an entirely different experience. And like I say, Portugal was just a wonderful country. The people, the food, the sights, very clean. I can't say enough about it.
Yeah, thank you. A wonderful presentation. Makes me want to go and do it. I just
Highly
have to
recommend
find
it.
time. Yeah, but Julianne, is there anything else that we need to mention?
I don't think so. I think that about covered it. It was
Yeah,
just-
and I'm going to comment on the thing Juliana said about time.
Yeah.
It's really how much time you want to get. People start where they want, and they do what they want. Maybe they'll do one section of it, one little part of it, and it's all good. You just want to experience that thing for maybe a week and a half, 10 days or something like that. It's fine. And this trip was only 12 days of actual on the trail. When I did the French way, it was 32 days. I think they were both wonderful, but like I say, it was different.
Mhm.
Got to experience Portugal, and I also got to experience that coastal walk, which is in
Yeah.
the spring was just wonderful.
Well, thank you, Joe. What a delightful
Yeah,
presentation,
thank you.
chock full of information. Yeah.
Yeah, I think great presentation, Joe. Lots of good comments in the chat section. And by the way, if you want to save the chat section, in the lower right-hand corner, there are some little dots. And if you click on those dots, it opens a menu, and top of the menu is Save Chat. And you can save
Okay.
that chat.
Yeah.
And I have posted in there the link to the San Gorgonio chapter YouTube channel. And I think at this point, I'm going to stop the recording because I think we're about